Jesus wept. It is the shortest sentence in the English language, or at least it used to be in the King James Version. And my old English teacher loved this sentence. Jesus wept. She loved it because it illustrated so poignantly that all you need to make a sentence is a subject, Jesus, and a verb, wept. The problem with such a short sentence is that it leaves so many questions. The most pressing of which is, why? Why did Jesus weep? You might think this is obvious. His friend died. Who of us has not wept at the death of a loved one? But this is Jesus. He is the Son of God. He intentionally delayed going to Lazarus so he could show God's glory by raising him from death. He knew what was going to happen. He knew that Lazarus would soon be among them again. He's in control. So why did Jesus weep? To get a sense of this, try putting yourself in his shoes for a moment. Close your eyes if it helps. Stand there, watching the crowd come out with Mary and Martha. They're all red-eyed from crying. These are people you love. And they are so sad. What are you feeling now? Compassion for what these friends are going through? Regret for not going sooner to prevent Lazarus from dying? Or something more? I suspect at that moment when he says, "Where have you laid him?" And they respond, "Lord, come and see." At that moment, everything boils over. Jesus weeps not just for his dead friend or for his suffering family and friends, but also for himself. Not just for what has happened, but for what is going to happen. Jesus must know what is about to happen to Lazarus. The man has been dead for 4 days. It cannot be for Lazarus' sake then that Jesus raises him. Lazarus has been at rest, at peace. We believe that death is no punishment, but life eternal with God, and therefore a joy. Now, 4 days into it, Lazarus is going to be called back into this hard and harsh world. And Jesus does this with full awareness that Lazarus will then again have to go through the whole thing all over. Worse yet, John hints that it will be someday soon and that it will be a violent death at the hands of others. So perhaps Jesus weeps for his friend who was to be ripped from heaven, who will become an object of curiosity for the people around him, and who now has a target on his back. Yes, this is for the glory of God so that others may believe, but it isn't easy. If you were asking your friend to go through that, wouldn't you weep? And he weeps for himself also. To understand this, let's take a step back from this scene and look at where Jesus has just come from. Before going to Lazarus, he was teaching across the Jordan River because that was out of the hands, out of the reach of the Jewish authorities. Only days before that, he had been in Jerusalem, where he nearly got stoned to death himself for calling himself the Son of God. Jesus' disciples tried to talk him out of coming back to Judea to go see Lazarus in Bethany, because it's just too close to Jerusalem. It says 2 miles. And this is on Jesus' mind as he waits to see Lazarus' tomb. There are people who wish him harm. And yet there's even more on his mind. Now we take a step forward in time. The Passover is coming in just a week or so. Jews go to Jerusalem for Passover en masse. Jesus will go there too. It's in just the next chapter where he has the triumphal entry into Jerusalem, Palm Sunday. It will terrify his disciples. But Jesus knows that this will be the final confrontation with the religious authorities. He knows that when he goes to Jerusalem this time, it will lead to the cross. He knows that it is now a matter of days before he faces the same journey that his friend Lazarus has just come back from. He knows that people will wonder, was any of this necessary? To have your friend die? To raise him? Your own death? Why should anyone suffer like this? It's really a simple and harsh answer. Because God made us human. We have bodies. We are physical beings. And if you have a body, even if you are the Son of God, you will suffer. Yes, it turns out it's all worth the suffering. It is better to live and then die than to have never lived at all. But in the midst of the suffering, and sometimes in anticipation of it, it seems unbearable. For Jesus, that moment comes as he faces Lazarus' tomb and knows how very real things are about to become. So he wept. If you need a discipline for this last week of Holy Week, and I don't mean sitting in church and freezing, maybe you can contemplate why Jesus wept, how he wept, and yet kept moving forward. And then ask yourself, what makes you weep? What makes the past, the present, and the future come crashing in on you the way it did for Jesus? And what makes you get up and keep moving forward anyway? And when you find that, hold on to that which makes you move forward, because it is what God put you on this earth to do. Jesus wept because life is sometimes overwhelming. But he kept moving forward because his work was to make the glory of God known, and like him, we are blessed to know that as long as we live, our moving forward will touch the lives of others, and that too is the glory of God. Amen.